After being reborn, the first thing I did was hurry back from the estate to the Prime Minister's residence. Inside the hall, a young woman was kneeling on the floor, her face pale and gloomy, her frame thin and frail, clothed in a patchwork of mended rags. She was the illegitimate daughter my father begot after a single night of lust years ago. In my past life, she married the tyrant in my place. After gaining his favor and endless indulgence, she poisoned my entire family. For 12 years as a wandering spirit, I hated her to the marrow of my bones. But when the truth finally came to light, hatred turned into something heavier, sorrow. Father, mother, let me be the one to marry him. I helped my half-sister rise from the ground. His Majesty personally named me. There's no reason to let another bear this calamity. I will go. My name is Xianxia, the legitimate daughter of the Prime Minister's household. Now, I am the laughingstock of the noble circles in the capital, 18 years old, still confined to my boudoir, with 3 broken engagements behind me. At 14, I was betrothed to a young general, he died in battle. At 15, after exchanging betrothal letters with the minister's family, their son drowned soon after. The most recent engagement was 2 years ago, my father's disciple, an upright man of humble birth. He had a cousin who grew up with him since childhood. Not long after our birth charts were matched, I happened to meet that cousin by chance. She was delicate and pitiful, with an air of fragile innocence. In the bustling marketplace, she publicly accused my family of using power to oppress others, then threw herself to the ground and framed me for pushing her. I slapped her across the face, and that was the end of the engagement. Rumors of my husband killing fate spread once more. Even my 2 younger sisters, now of marriageable age, found no suitors willing to cross our threshold. At banquets among noble ladies, everyone avoided me as though I carried a curse. Some even mocked me as the rot that spoiled the pot. Mother scolded them for speaking nonsense, yet worry clouded her eyes. Xianxia, perhaps you should stay at the country estate for a while. Once your sisters' marriages are settled, I'll see what can be done for you. As the lawful wife of my father, Mother always had her own calculations. Still, my younger sisters were gentle and well-mannered, we had grown up together, and I cherished them dearly. So I saw no harm in leaving. Before departing for the southern estate, I held Mother's hand and said with a faint smile, "Spending one's life unmarried isn't such a dreadful thing." But when everything was finally settled, my parents never came to bring me home. Later, I learned the truth. My father's political rival used my situation to attack the family's reputation. And when the tyrant overheard the gossip, he decided to bring me into his palace, to suppress misfortune with imperial qi. He was 30 years old. His days consisted of 2 things only, alchemy and killing. When not concocting elixirs, he was taking lives. His harem was almost empty, 7 or 8 concubines in total, some sick, others insane. My parents loved me deeply. Unable to bear sending me to such a place, they risked everything and let my half-sister take my place instead. After rebirth, I ran through the night to return to the Prime Minister's mansion. I helped my half-sister up from the ground, cutting off the root of every tragedy that once was. "I will marry him," I said. Mother clutched my hand, eyes rimmed red. "Enough of this nonsense. That place devours people alive. Man has already agreed. Eat your meal and go back to the estate, stay hidden for a while, and things will pass. When women of the Zhao kingdom go out, they must veil their faces. All the more so after my name began to spread. Since then, I've long stopped attending banquets among noble ladies. Few in the capital have ever seen my face. Letting Yiman marry in my place and erase all traces, such a scheme could easily pass without flaw. But I knew she was unwilling. Or rather, she had no right to refuse. The Yi family's household rules were strict. My father and mother both came from noble lineages, gentle, proper, untouched by the sordid gossip whispered in the streets. Father had 4 concubines and 6 children by them. Any child of promise, or any too neglected to be taught, mother would take in and raise under her care. Since childhood, no matter what I had, clothes, jewelry, or allowances, my brothers and sisters never lacked their share. Mother was the very image of a virtuous matron of the Zhao kingdom, dignified, upright, her maiden family powerful, her husband's respect firmly earned. She never saw father's concubines as enemies, she often told me. A family that accumulates kindness will never lack blessings. Be broad-minded, children of secondary birth also carry the Yi name. Yet there was one exception, Yi Man. Her mother was too deranged, and lost the goodwill of everyone in the residence. Before entering our household, that concubine, whose given name was Fan Fan, had been a courtesan in a pleasure house. One night, father was drinking with colleagues when he happened upon her being harassed. Out of pity, he intervened, only to find himself entangled in trouble he could never undo. She drugged him and climbed into his bed, taking a golden hairpin he had once given away as proof of affection. When she conceived, she forced her way into the residence, shouting madness before my mother, insisting she and father were destined lovers. Within months, everyone in the household despised her. When mother sent her tonic, she accused it of being poisoned and threw it away, cooking her own meals until she gave birth prematurely at 7 months, then claimed mother caused it. At first, the child was named Schumann, a gentle and auspicious name, but the woman insisted on changing it capriciously. When the little girl turned 3, mother offered to bring her into the inner court to raise properly. The concubine went hysterical, pounding her chest, rolling on the floor, weeping day and night that if her child were taken, she'd rather die. Did she truly love her daughter? Unlikely. She merely used her as a weapon to cling to power. Anyone in the household who showed Yi Man a hint of kindness would find the woman leeching off them relentlessly, like draining blood. Eventually, mother stopped trying. She sent 2 matrons to teach the girl and ensured money and supplies arrived each month, enough that they lacked for nothing. Thus Yi Man grew up in such a home. She could not understand why everyone avoided her, why her mother beat her, leaving bruises and scoldings. Why weren't you born a son? She dared not mention us siblings, even speaking our names drove her mother into violent fits. So she only watched us play from afar, small, timid, shrinking into corners. If we ever noticed her, she fled like a startled bird. Even her replacing me in marriage was her mother's idea. The woman's eyes burned with madness, obsession, and hatred as she hissed. A chance like this, and that wretch still thinks it's not enough. Agree at once. Your mother wants you in the palace. Seduce the emperor, bear his child, seize the favor of all 6 palaces. When that happens, I'll stand equal to that proper wife. Master Yi will no longer shun me for her sake. She gripped Yi Man's wrist so hard that blood welled beneath her nails. You must go. You owe me your life. From now on, I'll teach you how to paint your face, how to please a man. At that thought, my hand that supported Yi Man trembled and fell still. She was a pitiful girl, beneath her sleeves were scars upon scars. Pain that had long since become numbness. It was not good for her. I placed a hand on her shoulder. Man, don't be afraid. I won't let you go. Nor will I let the Yi family commit treason. This calamity was meant for me, no one else should bear it. I will face it myself. Since childhood, mother had taught me the art of household rule. I had punished cruel servants, traveled to the western borders, I was far more suited to survive danger than she. I stepped toward my parents, took their hands, and said softly, Father, Mother, I know when eldest sister was sent to marry at the frontier, you couldn't bear to see me suffer again. But Man is my sister. What reason is there in the world for a younger sister to shield her elder? I smiled, teasing gently. Besides, with father a great minister and mother holding an imperial title. How could I ever be afraid, knowing you're behind me? At last, I persuaded them. I had always been strong-willed. Once I decided, no one could sway me. Mother used to praise this stubbornness as virtue, but now she hated it, wishing I could hesitate just a little longer. The day of my entry into the palace was set sooner than anyone expected. That night the household held a family banquet. Mother wouldn't stop ladling food into my bowl, tears falling as she did. My younger brothers and sisters sobbed with her. I murmured whatever words it took to calm them. When it came time to stand and raise a wine cup, I deliberately made a detour and pretended to spill wine onto Yi Man, who was sitting at the far end of the table. All eyes turned to her. I bent down, took a cloth and helped wipe her, speaking gently, "Sister, it was an accident." While I wiped, I pushed up the sleeve of her long robe and steadied her struggling hand. Under the lamplight, the arm, white as jade, was a map of bruises and wounds, a terrifying sight. Concubine Fan had always been cruel, but she did her beating behind closed doors. Yi Man had never thought to complain to anyone. Now that everything was uncovered, Mother could not sit still. She struck the table with her palm, fury blazing. "Go fetch that wicked vixen at once. No matter what man has done, she is still a member of the general's household. What business is it of that woman? She only sits in the rank of concubine because she was with him when she bore a child, but in her bones she is base. How dare she beat people like this? It's an outrage." Everyone at the table nodded, grim-faced. The Yi family's pride ran in our blood. We rise together, we fall together. Even if one relative kept to themselves, no one could allow an outsider to humiliate us publicly. That night Concubine Fan was made to kneel in the courtyard until dawn. At first she wailed and tore at her hair, later they gagged her so only muffled sobs escaped. Mother's anger did not subside. She ordered the woman's chamber cleared and the household allowance cut. Through it all Concubine Fan bowed her head, her eyes filled with a mixture of hatred and madness. Yi Man sat beside me, trembling. She could already foresee the brutal wrath her mother would unleash after this. When she tried to kneel and offer to take my place, I held her back, smiling, and drew her toward Mother. That concubine has truly gone mad. I think she should be sent to a temple to purge whatever demons possess her. Mother, since I'm about to leave, why not bring Man to live near you? After all, she is a Yi daughter, she shouldn't grow up without learning anything or be a laughingstock. She was already 16 and unmarried. Mother feared she was beyond reform, but this was my last wish before I left. Mother could not refuse, and at last she agreed. By the end of the meal, Yi Man had plucked up the courage to serve me a spoonful of food. Her fingers trembled, she spoke little and acted more than she spoke, but when she did speak her voice was awkward and full of earnestness. Sister, let me go instead. I volunteer. Shoo. I smoothed her hair and said softly. The clan will not be pleased. Just remember one thing and carve it into your heart. You are not some stray we've called Yi Man in this house. You are Yi Shuman, my sister, a daughter of the general's household. Look at the people around this table, they are your kin, your lifelong support. At those words she fell silent and bowed her head. The candlelight caught the lines of her face like glass, finally cracking under the small warmth she had longed for, revealing a vulnerability beneath the hardened shell. She bowed and wept, her tears slid down and gathered on her chin, dropping one by one. A cold autumn wind blew. I straightened her robe for her. After I enter the palace, you will move into my wing, Shuman. A small ember of light kindled in the darkness behind her eyes. This life, under Mother's watch and the protection of the Yi family, she would relearn family ties. I would smother the fuse, dispel the grievances, the smoke and flame of war, let me face that. The 6th day of the 10th month was an auspicious date, verified twice by the imperial astrologers. After a heavy rain the sky cleared, the late afternoon sun slanted down and the autumn garden burst into bloom, rich with color. Only, before I could be borne away in a flower sedan, I had to kill someone. The one I needed to kill was Mama Man, a trusted maid of Concubine Xie. Concubine Xie was the Empress Dowager's niece and held a special intimacy with the tyrant. Her clan monopolized influence in the inner palace. Rumor had it that only when he met her could the tyrant temper his bloodlust and refrain from wanton slaughter. When one rises to power, even the chickens and dogs ascend to heaven with them, so even the servants grew arrogant. I endured an entire lecture on palace etiquette. At the appointed auspicious hour, the old nursemaid smiled thinly as she recited all that had transpired within the Yi residence, warning that once I entered the palace, I must obey the imperial rules. A warning meant for me. Under Mother's tense, furious gaze, I waited for the perfect moment and leaned slightly to one side. Mama Man immediately stepped forward to steady me. The ceremonial robe tore with a sharp rip. The Eastern Pearl, symbol of noble favor, rolled across the floor. Everyone dropped to their knees, scrambling to retrieve it. I lifted my veil, voice trembling with outrage. I was personally chosen by His Majesty as a consort. According to protocol, a 5th-rank female officer or above should have been sent to escort me. Yet you send an old servant like this, fine, I can bear it. But who gave her the courage to tear my robe and disrupt the ceremony? What is her intent? If the esteemed concubine Xie does not wish for me to enter the palace, she should tell His Majesty herself, not humiliate me here. My family immediately understood. Mother seized the moment, face pale with fury, rising to her feet. So that's it, malice and scheming. I will kneel at the gates of UNG Palace and demand justice. The Yi family has ever been loyal. Need I remind anyone that 7 years ago, my eldest daughter married to the frontier for peace between two nations. And now, when the realm is finally calm, a mere servant without rank dares to cause trouble here. What order remains in this empire? Tears welled in her eyes. My brothers and sisters cried out together, "We'll enter the palace with Mother." A Yi daughter must not be trampled. Mama Man collapsed, knocking her head against the ground, slapping her own face in panic. She had only wanted to display authority and win her mistress's favor, but now the weight of her blunder crushed her. When Chief Eunuch Li arrived and saw the chaos, the auspicious hour had already passed. Everything inside the palace was ready, only waiting for me. It took but a few words to piece the story together. He spat at Mama Man. "Are you mad? Has the noble concubine been drinking again, sending you to make a scene? Touching an imperial consort, one life wouldn't be enough to pay for it." He dragged her aside and turned to me with an obsequious smile. "My lady, after all, today is a joyous day. The whole palace awaits you. The Eastern Pearl has been found, please, change quickly and take your place in the sedan." A female officer came to lead the way, but I raised a hand to stop her. "This won't do," I said evenly. "Whether the hour is late is not the point. There's a question that must be answered now, because once I step into the palace, I can no longer speak. Today everyone saw my robe torn, my honor disgraced, my family's name sullied. If, overcome with shame, I were to take my own life in despair, tell me, whose will would that serve? His Majesty's? The noble concubine's? Or someone else's?" Eunuch Li shook his head again and again. "Then I understand." I narrowed my eyes and smiled coldly. "Guards, drag that insolent wretch out and beat her to death." Mama Man gasped. "Who dares?" Eunuch Li tried to intervene, but I cut him off, each word edged with ice. "I know that bloodshed is ill-omened, but this is not merely a torn robe. The Eastern Pearl fell, the ceremonial gown was ruined, even my veil was snatched away. His Majesty bestowed divine favor to suppress my fate, yet this servant shattered everything. To be grateful for imperial grace, I cannot allow her to live another day." The corners of my lips curved faintly. "What is it, Chief Eunuch Li? Do you believe she does not deserve to die? So the Emperor's grace can be trampled and it's of no consequence, is that what you mean?" That day, I stepped into the sedan chair to the sound of Mama Man's dying screams. No more chaos, only the faint thud of a gagged cry. The veil covered my face again, hiding the pale smile on my lips. Mother squeezed my hand, whispering that I'd been too open, that I should have concealed my intent. But, Mother, I could no longer restrain myself. In the last life, when my half-sister married in my stead, Mama Man was the one who escorted her, tormenting her throughout the ceremony. After the deceit was discovered, my sister was coerced and threatened at every turn, walking on the thinnest ice. The Xianxia clans had long been enemies. Deep within the palace, concubine Xie used poison and deceit, forcing my sister to throw herself into a well, or else face an accusation of treason brought before the emperor himself. I remembered the death from my past life, how my soul was bound beside hers. By then, she was nearly mad. She screamed, laughed, wept, cutting her own flesh. At first, I had felt a cruel satisfaction. But slowly, I began to understand. My sister had lost her youth, her will, her strength to even protect herself. How could she ever have been the schemer I once believed her to be? In just one night, she seemed reborn, sharp, lucid, but in truth, she was only a blade wielded by another hand. Later, I saw the corpses piled high in her courtyard. Among them, Mama Man's was the most grotesque. When my half-sister's madness briefly cleared, she had taken vengeance herself. But often afterward she would wake from nightmares, clutching her head and crying, "It wasn't me. I threw the poison away. She was the one behind me, she followed me." Was there anything left unclear? Alas, my sister did not survive to the end, she was no victor. Even as a spirit, she gnashed her teeth in hatred. I swore then, every soul that deserved death would meet it. Heaven must have pitied me, it granted me this chance to begin again. That night, the hall of imperial command blazed with lanterns. The bridal bed was strewn with cinnamon and red dates. On my first night in the palace, His Majesty offered only courtesy. He was nowhere to be seen. Palace maids scurried to and fro before returning at last with the report. His Majesty is refining elixirs in the Hall of 10,000 Ways and cannot come tonight. The consort may rest early. I drank both cups of the ceremonial wine alone. Before the candles even burned low, concubine Xie entered, unhurried, her hair like dark silk, a golden hairpin swaying with each step. "Forgive me, sister," she said sweetly. "Don't trouble yourself over my useless servants. My cousin left my palace just moments ago. I asked him to speak on your behalf. The gifts I prepared are still outside. Oh dear, where have they gone? As the new consort, I should have had the emperor by my side. I was his chosen one, of noble birth, young and beautiful. Yet he did not come. If word of this spread, I would become the laughingstock of the capital." Concubine Xia, of course, laughed first. I smiled faintly. "Sister, whether it's an apology or a congratulatory gift, forgive me, but I haven't seen either." "All outside, my oversight," she replied smoothly. "I truly feel wronged for you. On your wedding night, His Majesty prefers to visit my palace rather than yours. Outrageous, isn't it? Tomorrow I'll scold him properly, demand justice for you." Her tone carried both affection and threat. I gave a soft laugh. Anger. Why should I be angry? Before I was a consort, I was a priestess. Rain or thunder, blessing or punishment, it's all the sovereign's grace. How dare I resent him? You jest, sister. Besides, your place in His Majesty's heart is not something we can rival. His visit to your palace is only natural. The best food and books must surely go to you first. Truly, I mean it sincerely, please don't take offense. I'm fond of travelogues and curious tales. If you wish to send a gift, perhaps a few volumes would be best. They'll help me pass the quiet hours." Concubine Xie faltered. Her name was Xiaing. She had grown up beside the tyrant, childhood companions, a bond of years. In the late emperor's reign, there had been 13 princes. The tyrant had been the least remarkable. Weak-eyed, motherless, and granted a minor title at 4, he was destined to be exiled to the southern frontier once grown. He endured misery few could imagine, until consort Nian, later the Dowager Empress, saved him. She sought out elixirs to heal his eyes, cared for him devotedly, and raised him as her own. The Xie family's service to the crown helped him seize the throne. The tyrant, ruthless beyond measure, had one lingering thread of sentiment. He honored consort Nian as holy dowager after her death and showered the Xie clan with power, granting them half the capital. He later married Xiaxing herself, forbidding anyone from surpassing her station. The court's balance was set. I could only endure. At least until he killed again. A few months before the Lunar New Year, my arrival had stirred faint ripples through the inner court. The tyrant obsessed over alchemy, the concubine sowed obstacles, my days were filled with quiet calculation. That day was no different. I wore plain linen, removed my ornaments, lit a small lamp, and bent to copy the Avatamsaka Sutra. 800,000 characters long. I was on my 7th copy. My eyes burned, my wrist trembled, the ink on the page wavered like wind-tossed grass. I crumpled the paper to throw it away. And at that very moment, concubine Xie entered, laying a hand on my shoulder with false sympathy. "Sister, you're so devoted," she said softly. "To spend sleepless nights copying scriptures for the dowager's death anniversary, how filial. Even I, her own niece, am moved. His Majesty isn't refining elixirs tonight, he's resting in the dowager's former palace, hasn't eaten all day. The kitchen's made porridge, why not deliver it to him yourself?" A kind suggestion, too kind. The entire palace knew, on the dowager's death day, the tyrant turned monstrous. He killed anyone who crossed his path. A few years ago, even the old eunuch who had served him since childhood met his end this way, only then was eunuchly promoted. Xiaxing wanted to send me to my death. But I thought, perhaps, this time, it was my chance. If one could escape with their life when the tyrant lost his mind, then the inner palace would not belong solely to concubine Xie. Then she would have to explain, herself, why she alone could soothe the tyrant's fury. If I played it skillfully, I might even shake the very foundations of the Xie clan. When the late emperor still lived, I had once come from the Xining palace. Back then the palace was splendid and warm, the dowager empress was kindly and old, over 70, often handing out cakes to children. Before my eldest sister's wedding she had stayed in the heavenly hall and cared for us tenderly. But times change and people fade. Now the palace lay deserted, at dusk the light had a ghostly thinness, and wild grass had run riot. No matter how you looked at it, I could not believe the rumors that His Majesty truly cherished the Dowager Empress above all. After 4 months in the palace, I finally met Xiao Yi, the tyrant the common folk whispered could quiet a crying child. He wore a robe of pure black, cuffs embroidered with dark gold patterns. Where once his features had been noble and clear, a shadowed solemnity had settled. With a sword in hand he was hacking at the dowager's spirit tablet, paper money fluttered in the air, a scene of horrific disorder. He stared straight at me, his eyes were aflame, shot through with red. Sword raised, he lunged and struck. Why? Why, do you still not let me be? I narrowly avoided him. The bowl of broth in my hand clattered to the floor, scalding liquid spraying onto his wrist. He seemed not to feel it and kept swinging the blade. I dodged and circled a pillar, quickly lighting the prepared incense. The sandalwood smoke spread, but before it could take effect he seized me. The sword buried into the pillar, his hand closed like a vice around my throat. His gaze was wild and cold. Kill them, wipe them all away, only then will there be peace. It hurt, terribly. My neck felt as if it would be crushed. The sensation of suffocation brought tears that would not stop. Veins stood out on my brow. At the brink of death, I did not draw my hairpin to stab him, instead I poured all my strength into a single, fierce slap. He froze and released me. I dropped to one knee, clutched his hand, coughing and forcing the words out. Your Majesty, the past is past. It is over. You must step out of it, forget. Do not let it control you. I did not know whether the incense worked, but in that moment I truly saw a flicker of reason return to him. Who are you? He demanded. Yi Shunian. Yi Shunian of the Prime Minister's household. My breath still ragged, tears at my eyes, face flushed from choking, my voice calm. You brought me into the palace because you would not take fate upon yourself. Ha, your nerve. Bloodshot lines spread in his eyes. He cut me off. All right. If you wish to live, get out, now. That day I crouched outside the entrance to Xianxia Palace, listening to the dreadful screams from within. The people say there exists a poison that can enslave the mind. When it sinks into the bone it causes a tearing pain like flesh being flayed from bone and tendons stripped. Those who endure it lash out and destroy everything in sight. The howling quieted only with dawn. And all of this stemmed from the ambition of a woman. Xiao Yi had not been born motherless, nor had he been inherently ill-eyed. As an infant he had been bright and vigorous, meant, by all rights, to live a life of ease as a princely lord. Everything changed when consort Nian could not bear children. She killed a rival, poisoned Xiao Yi, then under the pretense of treatment used all manner of ancient arts upon him. She did not act out of love, she wanted to make him her puppet to seize power, to call herself empress. It sounded like an old tale. But the boy at the heart of it was not as weak as she imagined. Enduring year after year, the caged hawk finally turned and plucked out the eyes of its captor. Xiao Yi endured long, one step ahead, he sent her to the netherworld. He had intended to annihilate the entire Xia clan, but the old woman left one final blow in her hand, she implanted a legacy of ruin within Xianxia. In my previous life, Xiao Yi withdrew from state affairs and retreated to elixir work in the palace. His fits came more often. He once intended to conspire with the Yi family. I had apprenticed to masters from a young age, my talents already spoken of across the capital. Yet the one brought into the palace was Yi Man, my half-sister, timid, weak, slow to learn. This breed of weakness widened the rift between the tyrant and the Yi family. Half a year later my father finally perceived something amiss. He was the most upright of ministers. To protect Xiao Yi he confronted the Xia clan openly. Day and night he stood by the Hall of 10,000 Ways, desperate to keep his majesty safe. Xiang deliberately provoked the death goo inside Xiao Yi's body, sending him into uncontrollable frenzy. In his madness, he drew his blade to strike down my father, only for the guards to intervene just in time. Rumors soon swept through the capital. The Yi family had fallen from grace. Not long after, my half-sister was accused of poisoning. From top to bottom, the Yi household was exterminated. The Ministry of Justice performed only a perfunctory trial, condemning us in haste. Our bodies, mine and my kin's, were buried by the compassion of commoners. The people rose in outrage. In tea-houses, minstrels sang openly that the tyrant was unworthy of the throne. Even though His Majesty imprisoned and silenced many, the ballads still echoed in my memory. When the moment comes that you die, I will die with you. I lifted my hand, feeling the wind slip between my fingers, and a faint smile curved my lips. This time, perhaps, the wind should change direction. By noon the next day, Xiao Yi carried me out himself. Before the Crimson Palace walls, along the endless corridor, hundreds of eyes followed. I lay weakly in his arms, eyes half closed, the hem of my gown stained with dust, my body wrapped in his outer robe. Everyone wondered, why had the tyrant spared me? In 7 years, apart from concubine Xia, I was the only one to leave that place alive. She had grown up beside him since childhood, none could compare. But I was still here. How could one step out of a tiger's jaws untouched? The capital buzzed with quiet storm. Even Mother's letter complained that visitors to our home had multiplied. Officials and nobles paying visits day after day. She carefully probed, asking whether Father should assist the situation from the court side. In the past, anyone seeking rank or fortune had to pass through the Xia household, paying heavy bribes and bending to endless demands. Father had long detested this, yet could do nothing. The emperor never appeared in public, and only Xiaxia was granted audience. Now that a new path had opened, he was eager to cleanse the court. I had never expected to overturn the situation by my own hand, so the upheaval pleased me greatly. Within 2 months, a wave of corrupt officials were purged. The outer court trembled, and the inner palace, too, was in turmoil. Concubine Xia came almost daily to provoke me. At that time, Xiao Yi secluded himself in the Hall of 10,000 Ways, not with Daoist priests, but with Miao shamans whom my father had brought to treat him. In my past life as a ghost, I had learned the truth. The late Dowager Empress had foreign blood, and her mastery of gu sorcery came from that lineage. She had learned it herself and left the secret within a travel journal, which she entrusted to Xie Ying. It was the Xie clan's ultimate weapon, but before she could instruct her properly, Xiao Yi killed her. Now that same secret, their guarantee of power, would become the blade that turned against them. His Majesty would not trust my words without proof. So I demonstrated that the sandalwood incense I used was concocted from that very method taught by the Miao shaman. It had genuine effects, and with refinement, could be perfected further. In every confrontation between me and concubine Xia, she held the upper hand. Even though His Majesty no longer met her, dedicating himself entirely to purging his poison, her rank was above mine, and she wielded authority to suppress me at every turn. But I would endure no longer. In this life or the last, I was never one to be trampled. I resolved to strike back, to kill once more, to cut off one of her arms. 3 months of careful preparation passed before the play began. I sought out the old nursemaid who had once served the Dowager Empress. She now lived quietly in the palace shrine, spending her days chanting sutras, still worrying for her grandson outside. I tempted her with silver and promises of reunion, while threatening her family's lives if she refused. Forgotten for years, she had repeatedly written to concubine Xia begging for release, only to be ignored. So she quickly agreed to my terms. For days she remained docile, chanting, eating plain meals, looking no different than before. Until one day she crossed paths with Chief Eunuch Li. That eunuch had long been Xia Ying's creature. 3 years ago, he had helped trigger the death goo inside Xiao Yi, driving him to insanity. In the frenzy, the loyal old eunuch who had served the emperor for years was killed, and Xiao Yi withdrew to the Hall of 10,000 Ways, isolating himself ever since. Now, 2 servants of the Xie household met again. Mama personally prepared a lavish table of food to entertain him, fawning with wine and tea. Once a proud woman of status, she now had to curry favor with a newly risen flatterer. Chief Eunuch Li, relishing his power, grew quickly drunk on her attention. Mama pretended to weep, lamenting that she wished to leave the palace, and begged Chief Eunuch Li to speak kindly of her before the concubine. At the same time, she presented him with a small trove of jewels to show her sincerity. Chief Eunuch Li accepted without shame. The next day, he pawned them all for silver and gold. But he hadn't expected those treasures to end up in the hands of the Minister of Rights, a man once promoted by the late Dowager Empress, her most loyal retainer. Naturally, he recognized his former mistress's belongings. Enraged, he stormed to the imperial cabinet and demanded a full investigation, swearing he would dash his head against the wall if it were ignored. The outcome was satisfying. Chief Eunuch Li was arrested and sent to the Ministry of Punishments. Mama appeared as a witness. With a strip of white cloth wrapped around her brow, she began to cry the moment she entered. "Your Majesty, this worthless servant deserves death. Please forgive me, Your Grace in heaven." That night, the chief eunuch was drunk and mistook Xinang Palace for another, taking away many of the dowager's jewels. I tried to stop him, but he pushed me to the ground. When I woke, "Lies!" Chief Eunuch Li shouted. She only lowered her head and wept. Chief Eunuch Li already had a prior conviction for selling palace goods. This new charge, added to his record, left the evidence insurmountable. Moreover, on that day Mama had gone to see concubine Xia with a bandaged forehead and a frightened look, claiming she had urgent matters. Over the years, she had often feigned illness or injury to beg release from service, so concubine Xia paid her no mind and left her waiting. How laughable, members of the same household devouring one another. Even concubine Xia lost faith in him, saying coldly, "You should have known better. If you must steal, at least cover your tracks." Minister Wang listens only to my aunt, not even to his own father. Why would you provoke him? From the start, my father's men had quietly fanned the flames, convincing Minister Wang this was retaliation from the emperor's loyal faction against the dowager's old guard. The man spread the rumor far and wide, and soon the entire capital buzzed with scandal. By the time the dust settled, Eunuch Li's infamy was known throughout the city. Even children spat when they heard his name, the traitor who betrayed his mistress. The next step was to ensure he confessed, and stayed silent. Concubine Xia coaxed him, promising she would help overturn the case and secure him a future. That future came swiftly. After signing his confession in court, he was silenced forever, his tongue cut out, a white silk cord tied around his neck. Concubine Xia hurried to train new attendants, waiting for Xiao Yi's return to present her next recommendation. She was so consumed with crisis management that she no longer had time to trouble me. Days passed in quiet peace. I tended the gardens. The palace flowers bloomed more splendidly than any in the Prime Minister's residence. Watching new shoots push through the soil filled me with calm delight. When the first buds opened, it was spring, the first spring since I entered the palace, and the first time I saw Xiao Yi when he was lucid. "You care for the flowers well," came a deep, mellow voice carried by the breeze. It was the first time I met him as himself. He wore a dark cloak embroidered with subtle gold, leaning against the balustrade, holding a hand warmer. He had always feared the cold. No attendants accompanied him. He beckoned me closer, sharing a trace of warmth, his eyes touched with the faintest smile. "Why are you dressed so thinly?" he asked. "These things should be left to servants." When he spoke, the corners of his lips lifted softly, like willows swaying in spring air. His face was not dazzling but carried a quiet refinement, reminding me of misty Jiangnan rain, graceful, serene. He took my hand and gently brushed away the dirt on it. Each time his fingers grazed my wrist, a shiver ran through me. I quickly pulled back, bowing my head to hide my turmoil. "This concubine prefers it so," I murmured. Since childhood, I had dreamed of tending a garden filled with rare and wondrous blossoms. Later, Xiao Yi did not choose anyone from concubine Xia's faction. He rarely resisted the parasite's influence, yet this time he appointed the late eunuch's adopted son as his attendant instead. He demoted concubine Xia 2 ranks and granted me authority to oversee the 6 inner palaces. Everyone said His Majesty favored me. A grace even Xiaoying had never attained. But none knew the truth. That night, he vomited more than 10 bowls of blood. In my chambers, I brewed a potion to ease his pain and calm his spirit. He drank it silently and still refused to leave. At last, I said gently, "Your Majesty, it's late. This concubine feels faint and must rest." He hesitated, his departing figure uncertain, glancing back several times before finally walking away. I closed the doors and slept through the night in peace. After that, I needed not interfere. Xiao Yi, who once triumphed over the dowager while frail and broken, could now master himself. After the flowers, I filled a pond with fish. Behind the Hall of Imperial Command stretched a wide open space. Laborers had dug a lotus pond there, filling it with water. Every day I cooked with my own hands, placed a wicker chair by the shore, and scattered handfuls of feed into the water, watching the fish swarm and leap. I even gave each one a name. To me, the palace became a place of retreat. But for concubine Xia, the days were far less pleasant. Once, through her sorcery, the parasite she had planted, His Majesty obeyed her every word. Even if the sky were to fall, one whisper from her would set all aright. Those tranquil days of command and ease were indeed enviable. Now, however, the parasite's control waned, Xiao Yi's resistance grew. The Xie clan's rise had been built upon a weakened throne. When a puppet awakens to its own will, the puppeteer can no longer rest easy. They had raised a tiger but fought it a harmless cat. For the first time, Xiaoying felt fear. She began sending letters home constantly, but every one was intercepted, feeding her panic as the magic slipped further from her grasp. Driven into a corner, what would she do when the walls finally closed in? For now, I kept my silence. Meanwhile, Xiao Yi began visiting my palace more often. Occasionally, when a young prince from the royal clan came to court, I would invite him to my hall, speak a few gentle words, and watch his bright laughter. It bewildered Xiao Yi. "When I come," he said dryly, "you're always tending flowers, covered in dirt, and half the time don't even hear me. Yet when he appears, you change entirely. Don't tell me you wish to bear me a child too." That was a dangerous jest. I thought carefully and replied, "Perhaps he reminds me of my eldest sister. She married far away at the border many years ago. In her letters, she writes of a child about the same age as the young prince, adorable, she says. Perhaps that's why I feel so fond of him." But that was not the real reason. That young prince, truth be told, was the benefactor of the Yi family, and of the entire Zhao kingdom. In my previous life, the marriage substitution had been the first mistake that set off a chain of ruin. My half-sister was completely trapped in Xia Ying's palm. Even her desperate rebellion had not scratched the surface of their power. I returned to the Prime Minister's mansion 2 years later than in this life. I had barely opened my mouth to speak when I saw my half-sister come home to visit our parents, while concubine Fan laughed in arrogance. I frowned, sat to dinner with father and mother, and drank poison from the very first cup. Ridiculous. 15 years of study, celebrated for my intelligence across the capital. How many sighed that I'd been born a woman, and before I could achieve a single ambition, my entire family died choking over a meal. Blood streamed from our eyes, ears, and nose. The last thing I saw was Yi-Man collapsing weakly to her knees. My soul followed, forced to witness everything that came after. The tyrant lost all control. My sister went mad. The cries of the people rose to the heavens. And then, the concubine bore a son. Voices calling to depose the tyrant and enthrone a regent filled the court. Amid the chaos, Prince Lu's faction stepped forward, supporting the young prince as heir to balance the warring powers. For years after my death, Prince Lu was assassinated, and the tyrant himself died of poison. That same young prince, only 11, carried on his father's will and waged a quiet war against the Xie clan. At first, he was weak, forced to bide his time, feigning loyalty. He flattered them, sowed discord, spun a web of open deceit. Then he led righteous troops from the western provinces and attacked the capital, driving Xie and her allies into mutual destruction. That night, my half-sister Yi-Man was dragged by the concubine to shield her from a blade. Before she died, she clung to Xie and did not let go, so the sword pierced them both. The young prince escaped east to the eastern capital. Order must fall before it can be rebuilt. When nearly all the rebels lay dead, he raised the banner of restoration and reclaimed the throne. He was 17 when he ascended. The first decree he issued was to clear the name of the Yi family. To return our ashes to the ancestral tomb. Sometimes, when alone, he would gaze into the empty air, where a faint, wandering shadow drifted. He would ask softly, "Master, have you found peace?" And I smiled. So, there truly existed people in this world who could see spirits, even speak with them. Peace. Could I find peace? The enemies were dead, but so was my family. Only my eldest sister remained, far away at the borderlands. The common people had suffered, the nation nearly broken. In that story, everyone was scattered, no one whole. Even the young prince, standing over the wreckage of empire, longed only to live a carefree life in the rivers and lakes of Jiangnan. When my remains were finally laid to rest in our ancestral tomb, my soul dispersed into the wind and vanished from the mortal world. Perhaps it was that lingering obsession that brought me back when I opened my eyes again. Back to 18, back to the moment before my half-sister took my place in marriage. But this secret could never be told. I smiled at Xiao Yi. Your Majesty, I simply like that young prince, he's innocent, and talking to him is pleasant. He just said he wanted to go to Jiangnan, where the scenery and people are beautiful, the food delicious, and one could live there forever without growing bored. Because of that single remark, Xiao Yi later granted the boy a fief in Jiangnan. That was 5 years later. The tides of the capital had shifted. The Xie clan's power had crumbled, their retainers scattered. Xiaing, once the radiant concubine, was now merely a low-ranked lady, even a newly favored consort could press her down. The cornered tigress had nowhere left to run. Xiao Yi drove them into despair but left a glimmer of false hope, just enough for them to believe they still had a chance, that the parasite's spell might yet hold him in check. But I knew better. He meant to destroy them utterly, to leave them with no corpse to bury. And that day was near. In the 3rd year of Longhua, the Xie clan finally rebelled. It happened during the autumn hunt, a time when accidents were common. Before the hunt began, the emperor and Xiaing quarreled fiercely. He coughed up blood, collapsed, and lay unconscious for a long while before waking. I made a show of hiding the truth, tending to him anxiously, forbidding anyone to disturb us. I even bribed several maids to lure Xiaing into the imperial infirmary, where she happened to glimpse a report left on the imperial desk. It detailed Xiao Yi's frail condition. Each time he resisted the parasite's control, he suffered internal injury, coughed blood, or fell seriously ill. His apparent vigor was all a facade, the parasite still bound him. Xiaing was ecstatic. That very night she slipped out of the palace to her family estate. When I tried to stop her, she pushed past and ran straight into the emperor's chamber. I could not risk her discovering the truth, so I pinched her nose until she fainted and had her carried home. That evening, every word of their treasonous meeting was shadowed and reported back. What gave me a headache was that as soon as she left, Xiao Yi, supposedly dead on the bed, opened his eyes, sat up, and rested his head on my lap, idly toying with the hem of my robe. The air thickened with something dangerous. His throat moved as he swallowed, his voice came rough and low. Shunian, all these years you've relied on my affection. When it's not your monthly confinement, you're presenting me with some other woman, always finding ways to entangle me. You're clever, you know what I want. I said nothing. He bent to kiss me, I turned my head aside. Softly I said, Your Majesty, when this is over, all will be settled. He smiled faintly. Good. His pleasure was obvious. The autumn hunt rebellion was simple. When the emperor mounted his horse, Xiaing followed behind, provoking him deliberately. The horse's shoes had already been tampered with. The steed panicked and bolted from the hunting grounds. Xiao Yi, choking on blood he struggled to swallow, could not call for help and soon vanished from sight. Reeling in the saddle, he nearly fell when a volley of arrows hissed through the air. One pierced his shoulder. The hastily stitched wound burst open, blood poured freely. He stumbled into the woods, leaned against a tree, face pale as ash, and demanded, Why? Before him stood the Xie clan's party, Xiaing among them, watching with a quiet smile. Most villains share one thing, a sickness of pride. They crave recognition, at the brink of triumph, they cannot help but bear all. Her laughter rang sharp. Under jeers and goading, she began confessing, one deed after another, years of schemes tumbling out. She even forced Xiao Yi to write an abdication edict. Caressing her belly, she sneered. Did you ever imagine, I'm carrying a child? Even if it's not yours, it will be yours. Even if it's not a prince, it will be a prince. You've always looked down on me. Even when the dowager forced you to marry me, you were unwilling. I never understood, what is it that I lack? I didn't want this either. Using the parasite has damaged my body too. Why couldn't you simply obey? Every time the poison flared, it was you who brought it on yourself. You were born of a lowly woman. Without the Yi family, you'd have been nothing. You sit on the dragon throne and forget gratitude, truly, you should die, sealed in your coffin, so I'll never again have to see you chasing after other women. As she spoke those words, she never noticed, officials had already begun to gather in the distance. That horse had never been tampered with at all, it had merely lost control after catching a strange scent. The hunt had gone astray from the very beginning. Everything unfolded just as planned. Those who lived by schemes perished by them. For 2 generations the Xie family had plotted endlessly to climb higher, yet in the end, all that striving amounted to nothing. Under the laws of the Zhao kingdom, treason meant extermination of 3 generations, and the ringleader was sentenced to death by slow slicing. That was the justice I had long awaited. In my past life, their deaths had been far too merciful. The only thing I hadn't accounted for was the ferocity of the dying. Xiang suddenly lunged forward, pressing a dagger to my throat. "No one move," she screamed. "Take one more step and I'll die with her." "Xiao, you forced me. How could you treat me like this?" Blood trickled down, drop by drop. Her hand began to tremble. Her emotions swung violently, joy, rage, despair, so fast she could barely hold the blade steady. One false move, and it would have slit my throat. I was still weighing how to handle her, hadn't even thought of what lies to tell, when Xiao spoke first. He looked at me, hands trembling within his sleeves, his gaze strangely earnest, almost tender. "I can let you go," he said softly to Xiang. "I'll issue the order at once. The past will not be pursued. Just release the consort, anything else can be negotiated." But words like that would only doom me. As expected, Xiang broke into hysterics. "Not pursued. My father is dead, my clan destroyed. What's left to pursue, Your Majesty? Can you bring back the dead? Time cannot be turned back." The knife at my neck bit deeper. I could not tell if Xiao truly meant to save me or was using her blade to rid himself of an inconvenience. I was beautiful, intelligent, I had served him well, holding the Xie clan in check all these years. Yet some men are companions only in prosperity, not in peril. I had seen him sink into his own darkness, and now the Yi family's influence had grown too great. In that instant of drifting thought, the stalemate was shattered by a familiar voice, my sister's. Yi Shuman. Now she was the wife of a third-rank official, a titled lady. That marriage had been of her own pursuit, and when she visited the palace, she always smiled when she spoke of her husband. "He said even if I marry, he'll never restrain me," she once told me, eyes bright. Sister, can you imagine? I never dreamed happiness like this was possible, it feels stolen, undeserved. Madam taught me so much, stepping into the world, I realized how petty my past worries were. I was so small, so laughable. Shuman was truly happy. After marriage, she came to visit often, sincerely, like real sisters. This autumn hunt, she had come with her husband. She didn't sit among the noble ladies but followed the soldiers into the field, anxious for my safety. At that crucial moment, she spoke, eyes red but steady. "Low-ranked Lady Xia, please release my sister. She was the one who took my place in the palace, I'll take hers now. This morning, His Majesty already." Her words hung half true, half false. Xiang believed that even an emperor, when truly in love, would hide it deeply and erect diversions to mislead the world. Besides, Xiao seldom spent the night in my chambers. For a heartbeat, she faltered, confused, dazed. Was this another twin-sister deception? Then, from behind my shoulder, her head tilted slightly, and an arrow whistled past, grazing my arm and striking Xiang squarely in the forehead. Xiao rushed forward, eyes bloodshot, catching me as I fell into his arms. And through the haze I saw her, my sister, Yi Shuman, bow still in hand, standing beside a young general, radiant with resolve. She loosened the bowstring gently and smiled. "Right under my eyes, you dared to harm my sister. Did you forget? Among all things, the one I excel at most is archery." The wind stirred, scattering willow blossoms through the air. As my eyes slowly closed, one thought lingered. Schumann was the greatest joy of my second life. She was a gentle, earnest girl who had long lived in the shadows, unnoticed. All she needed was a small push, a change in her circumstances, and she could flourish brilliantly. She was my own blood, and like the Li family she had learned to stand behind those she loved, shielding them with quiet strength. Man, do you know? You have killed our enemies twice. Your elder sister is truly proud of you. When I awoke again, Xiaoyi was seated at my bedside. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, he held my hand tightly, his voice low and hoarse. Shunian, you don't know how terrified I was. I feared something had happened to you. I was truly panic-stricken, I've never known fear like that. You won't blame me, will you? He didn't even call himself Shen anymore. I shook my head. No, Your Majesty. The Yi family will always remain loyal to you. To uphold the true line of the throne is the ancestral teaching of our house. My father was never one to crave great merit. That's not what I meant. He looked at me deeply. Why had I chosen him? To free him from his shackles. Because Xiaoyi was truly fit to be emperor. Noble in spirit, open-minded, brave, compassionate toward the people, unafraid to sacrifice the interests of the great clans for justice. And he was clever, terrifyingly so. In my previous life, as a wandering spirit haunting the palace halls, I had seen thousands of treatises on statecraft, each written by him in his lucid moments. Every line trembled with concern for the nation's fate. Even while ill, he had used his sickness as pretext to eliminate corrupt officials. Later, when I guided the young prince to his throne, his debates and essays echoed Xiao Yi's very words. He learned, though never perfectly, gentler, more sentimental, but he still carried forth the revival of the Zhao kingdom. I smiled. Your Majesty, you will be a sage king. He blinked. Why say that so suddenly? Because, I replied, the Yi family prospers too greatly now. Though my father is upright, his old students may not all stay clean. It's time to prune a few branches, don't you think? He froze slightly. Nian, you truly think that? Yes. The Zhao kingdom has already endured too many wounds. First, the Dowager Taifei's slaughter plunged the court into chaos. Then, concubine Xia's family nearly overthrew the throne. And now, within the harem, I hold the highest title. Your Majesty, so that you may sleep peacefully in the years to come, I must prove to you that the Yi clan will never become another Xia clan. I rose from bed, knelt straight upon the floor, and lifted the golden token of immunity high above my head. Your subject, Yi Shunian, humbly petitions Your Majesty to depose this consort. To permit me to leave the palace. At first, he refused. In confusion, almost panic, he grasped my hands. I believe you, Shunian. There's no need for this. I'll try to forget the past. I'll learn to be the husband of an ordinary woman, to cherish and trust you. I'll leave the inner court entirely in your care. I smiled. I believe you, Your Majesty. At least in that moment, he meant it. We had been together 6 years. I had never betrayed him. His attachment to me was understandable. News of my departure unsettled him, letting emotion overpower reason. But love from one who sits above all is like the wind, ever mingled with power and possession. And imperial power allows no equal. Beneath its weight, suspicion burns like a hidden volcano, ready to erupt at the smallest spark. We both understood this truth. Yet Xiao Yi still refused to let go. Shunian, is this why you never share my bed anymore? Because I have only you left. I answered quietly, Your Majesty still has the realm. After a pause, I added. There are 41 consorts in the inner court. Only 2 were recommended by me. You accuse me of plotting to keep you from others. But those women are truly beautiful. And you do like them, don't you? Then I continued. Your Majesty once despised Xiang for trying to control you. For making you suffer. And now, do you wish to treat others the same way? To act under the guise of care, yet chain them all the same. He fell silent. When I lifted the immunity token higher, I remembered, it was the one he had given me after the remnants of poison were purged from his body. He had laughed softly back then. Xianxian, take it. You may ask Xin for one thing, anything you wish. And my wish had always been the same. A peaceful manor, filled with flowers in bloom. Brothers and sisters visiting often, we would gather for tea, share wine, speak of family matters. Every week I would return to visit my parents. Father, forever worrying about the realm, would sigh over each corrupt official as if flesh were being cut from his own bones. He had always been the most upright of men. Mother, ever anxious for my well-being, would hold me close. I would rest in her arms and whisper that I was happy, so she would never know why my engagement had been broken twice. I left the palace 2 months later. Renounced all titles, claiming the wish to become a nun. Xiao Yi escorted me 10 li beyond the gates. He did not reclaim the token, instead, he pressed another one into my hand. He swore that unless treason was committed, no member of the Yi family would ever face punishment. I walked far. The wind carried his voice after me. Yi Xianxian. Whether you believe me or not, on the day of the autumn hunt, I never meant to kill you. I only wanted you wounded or weakened, so I could sweep away the remnants of the old court. I never turned back. Not once. I already knew, Your Majesty. Long before that day, I had known. But I no longer cared. You have secured your throne. Please, guide this nation well. Do not let it fall to ruin. Do not let the people suffer again. I have seen too many die. Far away, in a palace 1,000 miles from the capital, my eldest sister, married many years ago, coughed up a mouthful of blood. The imperial physician felt her pulse, his brow furrowed. My lady, he said gravely, to alter fate twice is to bear its backlash. You will not live much longer. Her fingers clutched the edge of the bed. Several nails broke under the strain, yet she did not flinch. She only smiled faintly. But my family, they will live in peace, won't they? Her gaze softened, distant. Xianxian was always a good child, bright since birth. I haven't seen her for so long. And mother. She whispered, almost dreamlike. I want to go home. The end.